Hi, my name is Mark Bronson. I'm Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Fitz Contemporary Art. And I'm very happy to be able to talk to you today about Burner, a collection of urban street art that's been many, many years in the making. You'll be very fortunate to see a group of works by some of the top proponents of the street art movement, artists like Banksy, like Van Eyck, like Reka One, Henri Lamy, Pure Evil, Kef, Zero Gradient, Epsilon Qua, 123 Clan, just to name a few that'll be in this show. We have an extraordinary breadth of works to be able to share with you, and we think that this collection would be a great opportunity for you as a gallery owner. Thank you. A few paintings by Pure Evil, who has probably the best street moniker for any street artist one could have. So we have here a Statue of Liberty, and aside from the star symbolism, he's given the Statue of Liberty his traditional tear that's coming down from the eye. And you see that also here in his small original work of Elvis. In gallery shows, you'll see an original Pure Evil on the wall, and this tear will come down, 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 and go down the wall of the gallery and create a little pool of black ink on the floor. It looks very dramatic. Then we have a Pure Evil here of the artist taking a traditional street sign and stenciling a rhinoceros with graffiti on top of it and an arrow. Again, most of the street artists utilize these stencils so that they can go from one piece to another piece and use a lot of the same imagery, but different colors, different script caricatures on the pieces. Next, we come to an artist that was in the top 100 street artists of 2019. As you can imagine, street art kind of shut down during the pandemic when no one was allowed to be outside, more or less. So prior to that, Henri Lamy, the French artist, was on that list in the top 30s. And I call him the Paul Gauguin of street artists because he spends a lot of time on very remote islands in the Philippines. His wife is Filipina, and he harkens back to this noble savage idea of painting a lot of the native indigenous people from the islands in natural settings, but giving it a street art vocabulary and street art coloration and using his own palette. You see this also vividly in this piece with this great face of a young person, and then the elders here, these figures, the combination of the American $100 bill and the symbolism there, seeing eye. He is super talented, and we're very happy to have a great body of work of his. Then we come to one of the most polarizing figures of street art from Australia, Anthony Lister. I call him the Francis Bacon of street art because he is conveying a tormented side of an individual. He paints superheroes, but not as we're used to seeing them from our comic books or from other pop artists, but in a way seeing some of their darker sides, or seeing them portrayed in a way that very few people have ever portrayed comic book characters. But his heavy expressionistic view, you can really feel the emotion coming out of these works. Then we come to what many people feel are some of the standard bearers of the street art movement who've been around for a long time. a couple that work together, Scion and Chlor, and their co-name is 123 Clan, and they're famous for their graffiti writing, very similar in a way that Van Eyne is famous for his calligraphy. They're famous as well for how they portray lettering on walls, and also giving an advertisement, ad board quality to their works aside from the writing. And you see the diamonds here in many of their works in the ground. Here's a great small work by them. Then we come to one of the great young guns of the street art movement, Kef, from Berlin, Germany, who has the patience and the audacity to be able to draw these perfectly pristine concentric lines freehand and never miss a beat. In having discussions with Kef, he speaks about drawing these lines and going into a flow state, being almost hypnotic and in a trance, to be able to draw them so perfectly, so concentrically, that they look like something out of nature, whether it's seashells or feathers. It's remarkable how he's able to do this. And he's done it on a large scale with spray cans on murals outdoors, and has worked in over 10 countries throughout the world. He's someone that is catapulting to become a big name on the international stage. And we have his works in all different media, from small originals on paper to large originals on canvas to silk screens on canvas. So there's something for everybody. Very lucky to have works by Rekka One, another very, very formidable street artist. I think he's currently living in Malta now, but his works have a variety of palette to them, and again, an incredible use of stencils. Some have often compared him as well to the 1920s, 30s artist Fernand Léger. You see a lot of similarity, especially in this face of this figure here, almost an Art Deco quality look to it. But these works can look and have a different feel when you're up close versus further back. One can see a face here, lips, all kinds of imagery going on. So you could see how he could be very successful out in the street with his stencils and spray cans going back and forth. Then we come to the American artist, James Marshall, aka Dalek, who studied with the great Japanese artist Murakami and worked in his workshop for quite some time. And he came upon a character that populates almost all of his works called Space Monkey, and you see that figure here. And it's almost a futuristic world, a robotic world, combined with these super intense colors. But he's someone who creates a lot of the works on the computer, but then he takes those lines that he generates on the computer and creates stencils as well, and paints in with all of these different vibrant colors. It takes him a very long time to create one original work. We have a tremendous collection of graphics of his work, serigraphs, chiclets, artist proofs, hand-painted artist proofs that are tremendous. Here's a wonderful small original of his, and you can see the Space Monkey character. We're working on having Space Monkey figures made out of resin, and those will be available for shows as well, which will be fantastic to have sculpture by a couple of the artists that are going to be in the Burner exhibition. Then we come lastly to Epsilon Point, who is the French godfather of the street art movement, who goes back to the 80s of being out on the streets. And you have here a monumental work of his that has a combination again of graphics using stencils, écoute la rue, listen to the street. Then you have here, please hold the line, I'm trying to connect you. Some of these days, but super bright, vibrant colors, the overlapping, creating three-dimensionality, different combinations of paint, the nozzle size, the spray effect, up close, further away. Then we have another work of his here. Combination of up close writing along the sides, and then this almost stenciled landscape background in the middle. He's someone who commands a great deal of respect in Europe, in particular France. And again, we have a great collection of originals and graphic works of this artist, as we do all of the Berner artists. Well, it's really wonderful to see these monumental works by Craig Knight. We're so fortunate to have pieces of this scale. And you notice in his works, there's all kinds of symbolism going on, aside from the wordplay and the overlapping of imagery, caricatures, animation figures. So it's often important to find out directly from the artist what he was intending to convey. And you can also compare and contrast that with what you see in these particular works of his. But they're super powerful, and as you can tell, he put a lot of time and energy in this, and you certainly see his street background, both in the graffiti aspect of the lettering and the overlay of almost looking like one spray paint on top of another. Very powerful works. One of our great new artists that we're excited to be showing, who's super hot on the contemporary scene now, also coming from a great street art background, and we're excited to have him in the Berner show, is Harry Bunce. And so you'll notice in his works, he takes this rabbit who goes by the nickname Coney, and he shows him having all kinds of adventures and getting into trouble and missteps. And so in this one, it's great because not only do you see that he's been arrested and this is his mugshot, but you see it up against like a blackboard of all kinds of graffiti language that contributes to the humor. Here you see two rabbits, maybe in love, doing she loves me not with the flowers. But this is a very warm and touching piece. And then, I'm not sure if this one is called Bad Bunny, but there's one very similar to this that shows the bunnies smoking and drinking. And they look a little more toasted than in the other version. But you can see how the artist utilizes stencils, which is a very strong aspect of the street art genre. And that way he can utilize the same characters, but swap out colors, swap out themes, can add, in this case, bottles to, and create a completely different composition. Then we move on to one of the real stalwarts of the show, a super important artist from the UK named Dot Master. And I think he got that moniker because he uses literally the dot imagery, or what used to be in the 19th century pointillism, but using it in the street art genre. And he uses a theme that you see here of the kid painting over the Mona Lisa. And it's like, I want to say his bad boy and bad girls that are doing things that they shouldn't be doing. But again, you see this pointillist, digitized background, but it really doesn't convey the draftsmanship abilities that this man has, which makes him such a heavyweight in this field. Here you can really get a feel for his photorealistic draftsmanship qualities, which you see in the three-dimensionality of the Mickey balloon and of this gal who's expressing herself to the viewer. Then we move on to this wonderful expressionistic piece of Zero Gradient, a monumental work that shows the different sides of a persona. So it's a face that fluctuates between a skull on the right side to a very tender looking facade on the left side of the face. Wonderful brush work, splattering of colors. So a combination of both realism and abstract expressionism all in one piece. A very large and powerful work by this British street artist. Then we come to one of my personal favorites, Magnus Bjorn, who's a British artist who loves to juxtapose the old master, the traditional art, with the contemporary urban scene. So what we have here is a lenticular print which shows a famous portraiture painting that hangs in the National Gallery of London of a British royalty socialite from probably the 18th century. But then depending on how you step aside, someone has taken a Marx-a-lot and drawn a clown face on top of her face. So depending on the angle that you're looking at the piece, you either see it in its hundreds of year old glory, or you see it with the graffiti on the face, which is another interesting commentary of, in a way, defacing the old traditional artwork, which is what many of these artists in the street art movement have done. For those of you that may not know, a lenticular print is one that's photographed with cameras at different angles, so that depending again how you're standing and looking at it, the light refracts and creates this impression. Very similar if you were a kid and bought a box of Cracker Jacks, there would be sometimes a very small, primitive lenticular print inside the box. Then we come to the Pablo Picasso, in a way, of the street art movement, Banksy. We're very fortunate that we have one of the strongest collection of Banksys that are circulating in the gallery scene currently. We have works like these, which are posters of specific shows, but we also own works that are in the shows, like the hula girl that's here, that's part of the poster. So we have posters, we have signed and numbered limited editions, and we have very valuable original works by Banksy. But we can see all of the characters and the themes that have made him so popular and so compelling in the street art movement. That brings us next to Vinnie Nylon, who worked with Banksy back in the day, and they know each other, but here he takes his version of animated figures, cartoon and commercial figures, and given them their own life. SpongeBob and donuts coming to life, hot dogs, peanuts, hamburgers. He gives kind of an irreverence, and it's ironic that just like Harry Bunce gives the rabbit boxing gloves, Vinnie gives some of his characters boxing gloves as well, to make them a little more humanistic. Then we come to another very, very important British street artist who's been around for quite some time, Ben Ine, who's famous for his calligraphy. So he is known for how he writes words, and what he puts into that in the way of the stenciling and the coloring of the letters of the words. So he uses very pop expressions, in this case, modern art, envy, sex, and you'll see these different pithy expressions from him, but it's all about how they're expressed with this calligraphy that's done very uniquely with stencils. And this one is great because it also has this crushed glass background to give it that shiny texture. This is a small sampling of the works that we have in the Burner show, and I'm glad to have been able to speak a little bit about them.